welcome one and all to the latest Speakers Forum. I am Stu Heller, the moderator of the BALI Speakers Forum, coming to you from our satellite studios in Windermere, Seattle. And tonight we have the pleasure of hearing from Rob Speigel. Rob's wife, Marianne, joined BALI in 2016. Rob has a bachelor's degree in psychology and master's of social work degree from the University of Michigan in 1973, and studied hypnotherapy at the Wellness Institute located in Issaquah from 2001 to 2003. He's a practicing psychotherapist and hypnotherapist and loves conducting regular family constellation groups. And somebody later will ask him what that is. The Speigels moved to Seattle from Dayton, Ohio in 1977. They just celebrated their 45th anniversary. Congratulations. Have two daughters, Jessica and Liz. And by the way, Liz is a private investigator who I'm working with on a legal matter right now. Also in Seattle, they both live in Seattle, and the Speigels have a grandson toddler, Shay Jacob. Bob wrote and published his first book, a memoir entitled Of Endings and Beginnings, a memoir of discovery and transformation in 2015. He completed and published his second book, a metaphysical fiction novel entitled Braided, a not true story this past summer. The not part is not me stuttering. That's what that's what he named. And because this is metaphysical, I have dressed for mystery and metaphysics. Rob, we are anxious to hear all about it.
Thank you, Stu, so much for that really nice introduction. And I have some notes here to for my introduction. What I thought we'd do tonight is have a little book club, and I'd like to do some readings from this book, but I'll give you a short introduction of myself. Let me put up, wait a minute, I've got to do this a little differently. You'll have to allow for my lack of technical skills. Okay, share screen. And where did that go?
I was there 2 weeks ago.
Hold on just a second. Where did that go? Let me reopen that. Hold on. I've got to open something here. It went away. It was there.
Well, when you click the green share at the bottom, it should
it's okay. I deleted it from my desktop. That's what happened. So if you'll hold just 1 minute, I'll get it back, and we will be ready to go. It's down here, and it's there, and it's both books. And let me expand it. And now I can share it. my screen. And there we go. Okay, is that up?
Yes.
So,
Yay, the technology works. So like Stu said, my name is Rob Speigel, and I am here to talk a little bit about myself and my new debut fiction novel entitled Braided, a not true story. We'll get into that a little later. But most of you who know me know that I am a husband and a father and now a grandfather, and that I've spent my career as a mental health professional and a hypnotherapist. And while I had done a lot of technical reading and writing throughout my career, I had never really fancied myself a creative writer, and at least until the last decade. And I certainly never expected to write one book, much less two. But I started taking writing classes at Hugo House, if you're familiar with that, in Seattle, here in Seattle with my lovely wife, Mary Ann. And that kind of changed all of that. So in 2015, as Stu said, I wrote and published my first book, a memoir entitled Of Endings and Beginnings, a memoir of discovery and transformation. Well, it was transportation too. This is metaphysical. And really the motivation for writing that memoir was really just to leave my story in written form for my family, my children, my grandchildren, and anybody else who wanted to know me on the written page. And I told that story from the perspective of doing my own personal recovery work that occurred during my postgraduate work at the Wellness Institute. Then I began writing Braided in 2019. Before the pandemic started, actually, it became a really great project to do while cloistered during the pandemic. And when I thought about writing this debut novel, what I intended to do was write a purely fictional, metaphysical, and mystical story that somehow represented my own deeply held personal beliefs about life, about death, about our spiritual nature, and about finding the purpose for our embodied existence here on Earth. And while you might think that I used stories of my clients' experiences as the template for the characters in Braided, actually the characters reflect mostly the many facets of my own spirit that created the psychodrama of my life. So those are the two covers of the book. And let me get rid of this. And what I'd like to do is share the screen again and read from the back cover of the book. So this is the back cover. And here's what I wrote for the back cover. Overwhelmed by the discovery of her mother's deception and the secrets of her ancestors' origins, a young Seattleite slips deeper into prescription opioid addiction. Braided tells the story of how she discovers her true purpose for being during a deadly fentanyl overdose. Mira's body lies lifeless in her designer recliner, an empty pill bottle on the floor beside her. Her frozen eyes are no longer able to see the Seattle city light sparkling below, and her lungs no longer able to breathe the fresh Puget Sound air. Joined by the spirit of Jacob, who departed his body, lying dead on the bloody battlefield of Lexington, Massachusetts, on April 19th, 1775, their spirits hover together near the ceiling of her downtown high-rise. So by the summer of 2021, let me stop this share. and get rid of this. By the summer of 2021, the book became a reality. Is that up?
Yes.
Yes,
That should be a picture of it on Amazon. It was a reality, fully published and available everywhere. And actually, I just started recording the audiobook form of Braided in a sound studio, and it should be available actually in a couple of months. I also should option that Braided has been optioned by a Los Angeles movie producer who's
Wow.
interested in making the story into a movie.
wow.
So
That is really impressive.
that's pretty exciting. Let me say that one more share here. So the book has gotten several reviews on Amazon. Is that up?
Yes.
I love this one review, the second one. Great story, very thought-provoking, wrestles with big questions. Why love? Why live? Why live? What is the purpose of it all? And then he said, well written, excellent prose, and a love letter to Seattle. I love that review because the book is pretty full of references to different scenes in Seattle itself. And the book was also reviewed, get rid of this, by a company named Kirkus Reviews,
Mhm.
if you're familiar with that.
Mhm.
Let me share that. And I'm not going to read that whole. And at first, when I first saw this review, I was kind of concerned about it. She wrote a somber but insightful portrayal of addiction and a harrowing past. And I read that and kind of went, oh dear. Oh dear, I don't know if that's a really great review. Now this, if you understand Kirkus writes reviews for the industry. So the main people who read Kirkus reviews are agents, publishers, distributors, people who want to, librarians, who decide whether they're going to buy the book to sell to people. And so I was talking with Marianne about this review. I had to let it sit in and I had to sleep on it for a while. And I woke up and I said, well, I hate to say it, but it is a somber but insightful portrayal of addiction and a harrowing past. So they probably want to know that. I've really come to appreciate this review, actually. It's done by a professional reviewer, so people need to know kind of what they're getting themselves into. Okay, let me get rid of this.
Rob, who's the lady on the cover?
That is actually a stock photo that we purchased. I can say a little bit about the artwork. So you can purchase stock photographs and then you own the rights to it.
Mhm.
So this photo cannot be used. And by the way, talking about how to self-publish and how to actually produce a finished product book is something I'm happy to talk about tonight. I wanted a particular, and this is one of the things I love about self-publishing, is that you get to control the project.
Right.
And once you sign on with a publisher, you lose total control of the project. They really take over the whole thing and decide on the artwork and, you know, how to distribute it. I wanted a particular type of look to this, and I started searching for an artist, and the artist who did this was a 24-year-old guy from Singapore. He lives in Singapore, and he does his artwork from Singapore. And I just saw his work online. He does a lot of, if you know Martin Escher, MC Escher, if you've heard of him
Yeah.
or seen his work, he does all the crazy steps and rooms that go nowhere. This young man does a lot of artwork, and we went through a couple of iterations until he came up with this cover, which I really love a lot. And it makes into it's going to be a great movie poster. So, yeah, so we own that. I don't know who the woman is, in other words, but she was a model who did shoot and gave up the rights to her to that photograph. Who knows how much she got paid? You don't know. The photographer probably made most of the money. So let's see, what else do I want to say before we get into doing some reading? So I'm going to read some passages from the book. We'll see what kind of discussion comes up. After each reading, I may ask a question or two just to get a little bit of dialogue rolling. If you're into that, please feel free to ask questions or make comments at any time during the talk, and we'll also have time at the end for questions and answers. And like I said before, if you have any questions or want some advice or anything about self-publishing and ownership of rights and those kinds of things, I'm happy to talk about that part of publishing also. So, first reading. Is everybody up for this? Good.
Go for it.
Go for it. All right, so this occurs towards the end of the prologue. And the prologue introduces this scene from the Revolutionary War, where a character named Jacob, J-A-K-O-B, is introduced. So this is towards the end of the prologue. Without warning, searing pain pierced Jacob's chest. A spike of war impaled him, exiting through his back, the bayonet of his own superior officer. Exquisite agony burned a path through his shoulder blade. Jacob turned away from his executioner, unable to look into his eyes. Mortal shame dripped from his being. Black shrouds of worthlessness transformed him into a paltry being of no value. He reeked of inferiority, destined to die a failure. The officer's thrust dispatched Jacob to hell, forever immersing him in shame and dishonor. He believed no one would remember him. They would forget him for all time. As his lifeblood spilled into the soil beneath him and his breathing slowed to nothingness, a single question passed through his dying mind. Was this my only purpose in life? His eyes opened for one last look at life. His executioner stood over him, gripping his stiletto spear in place as his rage-filled eyes spilled over with disgust. Jacob stared into the brick red of his lieutenant's field jacket. His disgust became Jacob's disgust. Jacob branded himself a coward and a traitor with no human worth, destined to travel for eternity without redemption. As Jacob's eyes shuttered and closed for the last time, his gaze fell upon the officer's right shoulder, bringing into focus a single silken aiguillette adorning the sleeve of his field coat. The braided scarlet rope filled his eyes as he sank into darkness. Cold swaddled him. Oblivion enveloped him. A final shallow breath entered Jacob's lungs, only to remain unbreathed. All was still. All was still. All but for the sound of a distant, imperceptible voice. So why might this scene appear at the beginning of a novel about a woman who's might be struggling with addiction? Any idea?
Yeah, because she also is just pissed away her life somehow,
Ah.
and is not very happy with herself.
Mm-hmm.
It's her relative. It's her ancestor.
It's her it might be her ancestor.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Could be her ancestor, right? Right. Good. Excellent. So who might be the imperceptible distant voice? Any ideas? Not yet. Good. Excellent. So then we go to chapter 1. So this starts right back up from the prologue.
The next person in that this living entity passes into. It's a continuous story. It's a
Close.
continuous story.
You're getting close. You're getting too close for comfort. Okay, the two women talking at the table behind the window at the Starbucks distracted Mira from her mission as she walked by. Both ladies sported graying ginger hair, one with it double braided to each side of her head and the other with a long single thick braid hanging down from the center. They wore dresses of a forgotten era, flowered, old European. The two paused their conversation and looked at her in unison. Did they know her? Their expressions invited her to join them, to take a break from her hurried chaos, to have a cup of tea and sit and talk with them for just a moment. Mira's face flushed red and panic rushed through her body. She turned her head to the street where she imagined everyone in the passing cars was looking directly at her. Her heart pounded in her chest and her breathing stopped. She turned back to the table a second later, but found it empty. Her eyes dropped to the sidewalk as she reached out to the wall of the building to steady herself. She hated these moments when reality merged with unreality. They were nightmarish and frightening to her and becoming more frequent in the last few months. Becoming used to them scared her the most. She leaned up against the building for a moment to catch her breath. A passerby stopped to ask if she was all right. She answered she was fine. Perhaps the stress of work was getting to her and she hadn't been sleeping well. Finally, she pulled herself together, refocused on her goal, and brought her eyes forward. The doorway to the Walgreens was just a few steps away, and she soon found herself in line at the pharmacy counter after stopping to pick up her needed props. As she stood waiting for her turn at the counter, Mira felt beads of sweat break from her armpits. She cycled between Instagram and Twitter on her iPhone while moving up to the next position in line. The moistness in her palms and the subtle twitch of her right hand betrayed her calm facade. Why is that bitch taking so long to check out, she thought. What could she be talking about? Off to her left, a clean-cut guy at the cold and flu shelf caught her attention, interrupting her mind rant. Was he a store dick? Mira had scanned the aisles looking for any plainclothes security people on her way to the prescription department, but she hadn't noticed him until now. Her heartbeat quickened and a metallic taste entered her mouth. A quick right turn would get her the fuck out of there, but she'd taken her last oxy this morning and she needed more now. So that introduces our main character. How about that? Any comments on that? So At this point in the story, I'm going to kind of leap forward. We're introduced to Mira. We learn all about her. She's a millennial age young woman living in a downtown high-rise condominium, working as a business development manager at Amazon. We learn that her father died on a special ops mission during the Iraqi war. That as a small child, she witnessed her mother having sex with a workman at her house, who later moved in and became her stepfather. That stepfather molested her in a drunken blackout when she was 7 years old. She started abusing Sudafed in 8th grade after a doctor prescribed them for a sinus infection. She was raped at a high school house party when she was 14 and was drunk. And she slipped deeper and deeper into alcohol abuse and started using THC and opioids in college. So it's really the story of this woman who has come to Seattle, taken up kind of the opulent lifestyle of a well-paid millennial, but she's struggling with unknown forces from her past that have moved her into an opioid addiction.
Mhm.
So let's go to our next reading. Chapter 5. Thinking it might keep the pharmacist from sniffing out her game, or that she might run out of pharmacies to scam, Mira started sprinkling in a few scripts of fentanyl for her trips to different pharmacies around the city and suburbs. Her appetite had increased, so not to need so much. She tried to spread out her use. She started stringing her out and making her irritable. She read online about a plant product called kratom that mimicked the effects of opioids, and she started using that during the day. It definitely helped, but nothing could take the place of oxycodone and fentanyl. She was trying her best to avoid the panic growing in her gut. So the addiction grows, and on a trip to Canada, a ski trip to Canada, Mira suffers a devastating injury, multiple fracture, a fall down the ski run, and a multiple fracture to her leg. And she's hospitalized in Canada and then airlifted. It's such a bad injury, she's airlifted back to Seattle. So while she's in the hospital and in recovery, she starts to learn about secrets. This is a novel about how family secrets affect our development and come into play when we're dealing with addiction. So let me just go to, so she's now in a rehab center, okay, after her accident. First secret she learns of: the day before her transfer to the rehab center, Mira was sitting up in bed reading Stephen King and didn't notice her come into the room. "Hi, Mira," she whispered. Only one person called her Mira, and she always hated it. Mira looked up to see her mother standing motionless just inside the door. She hadn't visited since the accident, not surprising given the distance that had developed between them. The last time Mira saw Gina, she'd invited her to a Thanksgiving dinner she tried to host. Was that 3 years ago or 4? Grandma Nona always hosted Thanksgiving when she was alive, so her mother trying to pull it off had been a disaster, especially with Sergei present. Sergei is the stepfather. Gina remained framed in the doorway, silent and still for what seemed like 5 minutes. Extra lines creased her face, and the circles under her eyes had darkened since the last time Mira had seen her. Familiar butterflies fluttered about Mira's stomach. Would she ever get over the man her mother had brought home to be her stepfather when she was 7 years old? "What's up, Mom?" Mira asked with a chill. "I heard about the accident from Brian," Gina replied. Brian was Mira's best friend in high school. Mira had figured out that Brian was gay before he knew it himself, and he loved her for accepting him just the way he was. They would be friends for life. He knew about the cutoff between Mira and her mother, so Brian kept Gina informed about important events in Mira's life. "I knew an engraved invitation to see you wouldn't be coming, so I came by anyway." The butterflies grew into bumblebees with every sarcastic word her mother uttered. "There's something I need to tell you. It's been a secret too long," Gina continued without pausing. "I came to tell you that your father is alive." Without noticing, Mira stopped breathing. How do you think that would affect her? She was sure that her father had been dead ever since she was about 2. What would be the effects of learning that secret, do you think?
Hard to know. I think maybe a lot of anger at the mom for choosing to wait this long to tell.
Mhm.
Not giving her a choice of living with the dad and subjecting her to the rape by the
Right.
father. There's a lot of anger that's going to come out, which is probably why the mom didn't tell it.
Right.
Also, I mean, if that were me, I think I would get all hung up on what her life could have been.
Right. 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 Good call. Kind of the what I lost
Mhm.
in that
Exactly.
process. Exactly right. Right.
I would think there would be a great deal of shock, like, what planet have I been living on?
Right.
Yeah, yeah. I was sitting here thinking, what?
Yeah. 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 That I'm glad you used that word, shock. One of the things that we've studied in our mental health practice is how emotional shock operates. You know, we know about physical shock if you're in a car accident or whatever. Emotional shock is that disassociation and detachment that we do when we're overwhelmed. So that it's an overwhelming kind of piece of news for her, and she is overwhelmed by it. Well, then, to add insult to injury, of
Can I
course.
say something? Oh,
Say what?
I just had a thought.
Yes,
She's also being told this at a very vulnerable time by
totally.
her mother in a very insensitive way, which is probably very characteristic of her dynamics with the mother.
Totally.
So it's a whole paradigm shift. My husband found out he was adopted when he was in his late 40s, quite shockingly. And it was just a whole paradigm
Yes.
shift, the whole family.
For the whole family. Yeah.
Yeah.
Good call. Good call. It actually affects everybody. Right. Okay. So, let's see. I'm gonna move.
By the way, Rob, we
Yes.
didn't get the whole story. Does the mom know about the rape with the stepdad?
Well, you'll probably have to read the book. Okay. No, she doesn't. I said I wasn't going to give away too many of the mysteries. No, she does not. No, she does not.
And I want to know also, why is the mother coming in telling her this at this time? I mean, what does it even have to do with her daughter in the hospital after a terrible accident?
Well,
You know, it's out of the blue.
Well, it's out of the blue because the father is dying. He's in a VA hospital dying of cancer,
Oh, okay. So yeah, okay.
and he's asked about his daughter.
I see. Okay.
And so he asked Mira's mother to keep the secret. He was blown up in this firefight in Iraq
Ah,
and didn't want to come back half a man. That's basically what.
okay.
Yeah.
So there's more to the story.
Oh, yeah.
Of course.
Oh, yeah. Well, then I'm going to scoot forward. So she ultimately goes to be with her father. She goes straight from the rehab to be with her father in his final days and weeks on Earth.
Okay.
Got it?
Yeah, okay.
So she is in Portland, Oregon now. She's still recovering from her accident. And her father is dying
In Portland.
and she's in an Airbnb, and she's Amazon millennial research geek, right?
Mm-hmm.
And she starts looking into, now she knows their secrets. She's
Mhm.
starting to realize there's family secrets. So here we go. So she's back in her room. And where do I want to go here? Hold on a second. Oh, there it is. Here we go. So she's on her computer. Mira's stomach fluttered in a way she hadn't felt before. Back on the internet and following a hunch, Mira searched birth certificates in New York for 1959 and 1960. She's now looking into her grandmother, Nona. Nona's a main character in this book. When she searched under the keywords of Del Vecchio, which was Nona's husband's name, 3 records appeared on the screen. One stated that Antonio Del Vecchio was born to Rose and Barack Del Vecchio on November 9th, 1960, less than 5 months after their wedding. In addition, the record showed a cross-reference to a death certificate for an Antonio Del Vecchio that cited his death on February 6, 1961. He lived less than 3 months, perhaps from illness or sudden infant death. The information staring back at her from the computer screen stunned Mira. Gina, her mother, had an older brother she'd never been told about who'd been born and lost, another family secret. Plus, Nona Rose was pregnant on her wedding day. She kept all this secret from Gina, and now Mira knew the secret. So she's finding out secrets about her own mother's family.
Mhm.
It was as if Mira stood at the edge of a deep crevasse that she could easily fall into. She wondered what other secret she might dig up from the cemetery of her ancestors' history. Since she was already in the New York Department of Vital Statistics, she looked up Grandma Rose's and Grandpa Barack's birth certificates. Nothing came up for either of them. Why not? Maybe they were born in another state. So she went to the US National Database of Vital Statistics, and while there were other Rose Bloombergs and 1 or 2 Barack Del Vecchios, none matched with their other details. If Rose was a woman of secrets, could she have been born in another country? Mira opened up the National Archives database and started a search for Rose Bloomberg. The National Archives kept records of all immigrants entering the United States through legal means. She knew Rose's birth date from the New York marriage license Gina had sent to her, so narrowing the search would be simple. Gina had been sending her some information that she had requested. Fortunately, she didn't understand how simple. Only one immigration record popped up for a Rose Bloomberg with a birth date of January 2nd, 1939. It crossed by the way, January 2nd was my mother's birthday. My own mother's birthday. It cross-referenced her as the dependent child of Miriam Bloomberg, who entered the United States on May 19th, 1942.
Mhm.
When Mira opened up Miriam Bloomberg's immigration record, it listed her daughter as Rose Bloomberg, born January 2nd, 1939, both of whom entered the United States on May 19th, 1942. The immigration papers listed Miriam's birth date as October 23, 1916, and disclosed that Miriam and Rose were born in Cologne, Germany. Cologne, Germany. In addition, the papers listed their religion as Jewish.
Mhm.
Jewish. 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 Mira sucked in lungfuls of air. She looked at the screen of her iPhone. It was 1:47 a.m. Her text notification dinged. It was Gina.
Yep.
Okay,
Yeah.
got it?
We see where this is going. Yeah.
You understand where it's going?
Huh?
You understand where it's going, yes.
Yeah, I think so.
Family secrets.
I have some in my own family, so it's
Yeah.
Yeah.
Don't we all?
Yeah.
And
Some
Stu, you
epigenetics of trauma.
say what?
Some epigenetics of trauma.
The epigenetic. Oh, you've done some work. You know the terminology.
I'm a social worker.
Oh, good. The epigenetics of trauma. Ah, yes. And Stu, you asked about family constellation work, and we can talk a little bit about that later. Well, you can imagine that this goes in a lot of different directions, but ultimately it leads to this scene, and this will be the last scene I'll share. I'm not going to go past this because, of course, the end of the book is something for you to discover on your own.
Yeah, we have to buy the book and read it. Yes.
Yeah. I may run this. I think I will read this last passage too. I'm going to read two more if that's okay. Are we okay on time, Stu?
It's up to you.
Oh, okay. If everybody's in, I can read two more. Okay. But not today. She's back in Seattle now in her condo. When she gets back, she also discovers that the boyfriend who she'd been living with moved out while she was recovering from her injuries. So, one more little trauma.
Is she sane now, or is she still using, or?
Well, she's still recovering from the injury.
Yes, got that.
She's getting her drugs for free now.
Mm-hmm.
So in other words, she is still using.
Oh, well, let me read the passage. Okay. It's more than using at this point. Okay.
Uh-huh.
But not today. Her devastating physical trauma, followed by her mother's lie about her father's death and cover up about his existence, followed by sitting with him through his last days, and finally losing him again, brought her to her knees. Ian's desertion was the coup de grace, the death blow. The anger disappeared as quickly as it had come, replaced by a raw terror that erupted from her gut. Her recent discoveries from searching the immigration records came back to mind amid the devastation of losing her father and Ian. What had happened to Nona Rose and Miriam's family in Europe? Who were her ancestors, and were any left? What was her true identity? Could she believe anything about herself? Was everything about her and her family a lie? With tears cascading down her cheeks and dripping from her chin, Mira cried out for a shred of hope from her childhood days with her treasured Nona. Nona, why couldn't you tell me the truth? Where are you? I need you now. In desperation for something real to hold on to, she called out, "Okay, Google, Play Louis Armstrong's It's a Wonderful World. She and her Nona had listened to that on her Nona's old photograph. Louis's soulful voice began warbling around her. I see skies of blue and clouds of white. Mira slumped deeper into her ivory leather recliner. She scanned her stark room from wall to wall, realizing she'd never called it home. She referred to it as her place or her condo. She looked at the slate gray walls, devoid of art and bare of photos of friends and family. In a trance, she dug into her purse, pulled out the prescription bottle of fentanyl, and dropped it on its side on the end table next to her. She reached over, picked it up, and deftly popped off the cap with one hand to fish out a single tablet with the other. Pulverized by her teeth, the harsh chemical numbed her tongue and her mind. Her breathing slowed as the hole in her heart expanded. She no longer heard Louis' words as they lost their meaning in her despondency. The bright, blessed day, the dark, sacred night. Mira's senses dulled further and her eyelids fluttered closed. She descended into a state that was unfamiliar but strangely recognizable. Mira's brain no longer controlled her muscles, and her rational mind no longer managed her decisions. Raising the capless bottle of fentanyl to her lips, she threw back her head, emptying the entire contents into her open mouth, choking all the remaining pills down her throat and into her stomach. The deadly overdose moved through the walls of Mira's stomach and into her bloodstream. The synthetic chemical made its way to the opioid receptors in her brain. What began as an attempt to obliterate her pain turned fatal to her living organism. All parts of her sank into desperate, dark oblivion. Numbing darkness enveloped her. Mira's fixed eyes could not blink. Her chest rose and fell imperceptibly as her heart slowed with each breath. Her body, brain, and emotions slowly died as her spirit separated from her body. Her descent into oblivion brought no expected comfort and resulted in no relief. The darkness brought no clarity, no resolution. The gloom created no amnesia, and the blackness no ending. A void entrapped her. Her breathing slowed to nothingness as a single finally thought passed through her dying mind. Was this my true purpose in life? A final shallow breath entered Mira's lungs, only to remain unbreathed. All was still, all was still, all but for the sound of a distant, imperceptible voice.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yep.
Yeah,
Jacob.
Yaakov. Well, was it Yaakov?
No, but I mean, I'm only drawing
it's the
parallel
same-
between
it's the same
Miriam
word.
and Jacob.
Well, but it could be his voice too, right? Or
Well, or it could
or
be,
Nona. Yeah,
a voice that's mutual to them.
you would find out that later on. I'll read one. Let me see if I want to read this. One last.
Don't ruin the whole thing.
What's that?
Don't give away too much.
I'm not giving away too much.
All
But she
right.
has overdosed, right?
Yeah.
She dead
And she's technically dead, or
or
Well,
dead?
barring some kind
So
of a
remember,
miracle.
so I want you to remember the title of the book. What's the title of the book?
Braided.
What is
Unbraided.
it? Yeah. Braid.
What's the subtitle?
A not,
Yeah. A not true story. Yeah.
Right.
Not true story.
So you
Yeah.
ask the question, is she dead or is she not dead, right?
Yeah, maybe yes, maybe no. Yeah.
Well,
And was Jacob
she
dead?
could be not
not
dead.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So she might be not dead.
Yeah. Same with Jacob. We don't know.
So I think I'm going to stop there.
Right?
That's
Thanks.
mean.
I think I'm going to stop there. I want to tell you one more thing, then I'll answer questions. I put my my email address in the chat. And maybe Stu, I don't know if they can get my email address some other way, but if you want to write, so if you would like, I can send you a note that can let you know how you might want to get a free copy, Kindle copy of the book, and also get a free copy of the yet to be recorded audiobook
Right.
for free. So if you're interested in that, write to me and I'll let you know how that can happen.
Mm.
Okay. Otherwise, I've also put on a link to the Kirkus review, and I've put on a link to the book on Amazon
Right.
in the chat.
Rob, does that book come out in hardcover? Is it only a paperback?
It's only a paperback. My friend Stewie was trying to get me to do it in a hardcover as a gift book. So,
Well, I just read an independent, independently published book called The Weight of a Moment. I don't know if you know of it, but
no.
I usually read on my iPad. One of the things that was difficult for me was that you can't download it from Apple because they don't do independent books. Is that correct?
Apple does not have a download option for ebooks, I don't believe. But write to me if you, what do you want to be able to do? You want to have an
It's hard for me to read a paperback.
Right. So this
due
is
to my advanced age.
This is available on Amazon as a Kindle book.
Yeah, but then you have to have a Kindle, right? Okay.
Well, no. Did you say you had an iPad?
Yeah. Oh, you can get the Kindle app
You
on
can
your
get the
iPad.
Kindle app. I have a Kindle app on my iPad and my phone.
Gotcha.
And you can change the fonts and everything on that.
Yeah, that's why. Right. Okay. Thanks. Sorry.
Right. Good.
Because I want to know what happens.
I will tell you that she goes on a very meaningful journey after she dies. I will tell you that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, I can see. I mean, the book is still this thick after she dies. So.
Yeah, that's where the story starts in a lot of ways. Yeah, is after she dies.
So Rob, I at the risk of boring everybody who was on the entire time, I missed the first 5-10 minutes. Was this inspired by, your work as a counselor, or was this based upon what inspired you?
Well, I mean, wow, that's a broad-based question. I mean, I started writing this book when I was approaching 70 years old. So all of the above. The answer to that question is all of the above. If you read my memoir, which was put up before also, and I can put a link to that in the chat also. I wanted to fictionalize, so I did some very, very moving work in the early 2000s from 1995 to 2003. I was involved with the Wellness Institute, which is a hypnotherapy and release therapy institute, and did extensive, intensive postgraduate trauma release work. And it really was a life-changing kind of experience, and experienced really metaphysical events that shaped much of what went into the memoir, and then the memoir shaped the fiction book. Mm-hmm. If that makes sense. So there's there's a lot in here. I mean, there's a lifetime of experiences in both of these books, but told from a very different angle. And I really enjoyed writing the fiction. I had never tried my hand at fiction before. And I liked the artistic part of it. I liked painting pictures, describing scenes, using dialogue as a vehicle. I can't promote enough writing something in fiction. It's just fun. Even with a deep topic. I mean, it was fun to write this book. It does contain a lot of my work as a therapist. Mm-hmm. But a lot of my beliefs, it really altered. I think what happened for me was this theme of finding our purpose became critical to me. And how to go about finding that purpose became clear that it came from resolving the trauma that had occurred in our lives and ancestral trauma. Stu mentioned family constellation work, these groups that I do, which deals with ancestral trauma, you know, kind of where we came from. So Mira found these secrets that Mira found out about were critical to her ultimately, maybe, if she did, find purpose for her life. If that happened. But I'm not saying it did.
You're not saying it didn't either.
But I'm not saying it didn't, because it's not true.
Right. One of the things I appreciate about this book, Rob, and just kind of sending it out there into the world, is that it broadens our understanding of addiction.
Yeah.
Addiction is really complex, and it has a lot, you know, I mean, secrets, shame, abuse, all those things certainly have an effect. But that's not always, I mean, there are still people who might look at it as, well, this is a problem with drugs, you know, but
Right.
it's much broader than that. And it's very difficult to deal with the drugs if you don't deal with the other things. So
Right.
I think you showed this in the story, and
Yeah.
I appreciate that.
Thank you. Actually, the original title, which I had to vacate, there was a working title. I worked with a very nifty editor, developmental editor, who wrote a book called Darkensaw. He writes very, very dark stuff. The title of his book is Darkensaw, about a murder that happens in Arkansas.
Of course, yeah.
Of course. And I loved his title, Darkensaw. You know, we were writing the book and he said, well, there's an obvious title for the book. It's Overdose. He wanted to call the book Overdose. But it's so much more complex than that. And he hated the idea of the subtitle. He said novels should not have subtitles. And what's interesting about the feedback I get about the book is that as soon as people read the subtitle, they smile.
Mm-hmm.
They don't necessarily get it right away.
Yeah, I like it too.
Do you?
Yeah.
Yeah, I do a lot.
Mm.
And not true story. And people get Braided right away. I was a little concerned about the title Braided, but people get that. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Rob,
So
when I
does your wife proofread your book? And
No.
give you input? Not, no?
No,
I refused.
no.
Oh, you refuse? That's probably
Yeah,
smart.
in fact, she would not read the manuscript until it was in published form.
Really?
I think that was smart. She's writing, she's sitting right here. She's writing her memoir right now. She's finishing up her memoir. And
And you're not reading that, I hope.
what's that?
And you're not proofreading it, right?
Oh, no.
No.
No, I paid big bucks to have my book. I think it's been proofread 3 times now.
Well, I think you mentioned before that we, even though we've written all our lives, we were late to studying the craft.
Right.
And so it's been important to me that I not influence
Right.
that
Right.
book in any way. And I think it goes the other way too.
Well, and we had to learn that being a married couple and both mental health professionals and doing work together at times and separately, that we have 2 different styles, we have 2 different messages, we have very different approaches.
Yeah,
Do your memoirs include your marriage?
mine does.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah, Rob's does too.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And that's tricky, you know,
I
when
bet.
you're writing about family members and
Well,
people have
it's
different approaches to that.
It's even more tricky, and I see the names Jessica, Mike, and Liz
Yeah, right there.
in a black box, which I think means that my 2 daughters and my son-in-law,
Ah,
that Mike and
Now,
Jessica,
listen,
are.
You guys are on our TV. That's why we don't have our video on, but we are all here.
Oh, good. Yeah, you've been listening.
that's
Good.
just-
So
yeah.
I'll tell you what the touchiest thing about a memoir is, and thanks for coming, guys. The touchiest thing about a memoir, I think, is writing about your children and your relationship with your children. Oh, she put her heart up.
Yeah.
aw.
And I literally gave both of my daughters editorial rights on my memoir. I said, if there's any, I want you to read the manuscript. If there's anything in there you want me to take out, it's gone. And both of them kind of said, well, there's stuff that makes us a little uncomfortable, but neither of them asked me to remove anything, which I thought was a credit to them.
Yeah, and I'll do the same.
Right.
Some people, I think the trick is writing your own story, you
Right.
know, and you're not really, and also writing from a place of compassion
Yeah.
and love. And that really helps.
And Daniel, you asked about clients, are there clients in there? And I was very careful. I specifically would not put in anything in my memoir. I mean, there are some therapists who write about almost case studies and all of that. I know there are people who have read their therapist's memoir and they want to be in their therapist's memoir.
Yeah.
and they get pissed off if they're not in their therapist. So I certainly didn't want to start that kind of a ruckus. I was very, very careful not to put in anything that could be even closely identified as reflective of a client's experience. Now, with the novel, you have to put in that disclaimer that says,
Yeah, right.
These are not,
characters and events portrayed in this book are fictitious. Any similarities to real persons, living or dead, you've got to put in that disclaimer, because it could be anybody in this book. This portrays hopefully something that all of us can relate to at some point in our life.
So I think with memoirs, it's more obvious that you've been conscious of the audience in the sense that, you know, my spouse is going to see this, my children are going to see this, and it's a memoir. But with a novel,
Right.
who's your target voice, and how did you adapt? Are the target voices people who are in the constellation
Right.
of trauma or addiction in
Absolutely.
their lives, or was how did that change to have a novel which is going to have wide appeal, to have people who did not have a lot of personal exposure to trauma, addiction,
Right.
sexual violence?
And my belief is that we all have trauma and we all have addiction at play someplace in our lives, and to think that we don't. So I would hope that anybody could read the novel and find themselves in it in a helpful way. You haven't read the end. I won't tell you if it's got a happy ending.
You're not going to tell me.
You're
will not
dying
tell
to
you.
tell us the end of this book.
I won't tell you if it's true or it's not true
Oh,
or
just
it's
be
not
quiet
true.
about the end.
Oh, I will tell you. Okay, here's a spoiler alert.
No.
Oh,
No, don't
spoil
do
it.
it.
But the,
Okay.
but the issue is
Be
voice. Like
quiet.
the issue is
The issue is voice.
The issue that you're saying is that I think everybody's had trauma and abuse, and this will help them understand it or help them
Correct.
going forward. And this is a fictionalized novel to help that.
Right.
Right. And also to
Did you
provide
check-
empathy.
Did
Yeah.
you change your
No.
story to
Yes.
make it resonate better in one way or the other?
Well, no, let me answer that question differently. I challenged myself. You know, I talked to Marianne. I said, for some reason, I need my protagonist to be female. And I found that to be, and that just came from the ethos. I mean, I don't know. I still see, here's what's not true. I still don't know why I had to write it as a female protagonist. Now, I wrote it from a narrative point of view, so I didn't write it in first person. Marianne and I are listening to a novel, what's it called? The Feral Detective or something, where it's written by a male who is a private investigator, Liz, by the way, if you want to read it, since she's in there. But he wrote it in first person and it's all female voice. And I would never try that. So writing it from a narrative point of view gave me a little bit more
So
license.
there they are.
Hey, those are my children, my grown children, our grown children. Oh, Mike, hello.
Mike's probably.
And
both
Shay,
of
I
them.
assume, is in bed. Our grandson is probably asleep, I guess. So to write from the narrative point of view, Daniel, really solves a lot of problems. It really solves a lot of that problem. Because
Mhm.
I have license as a narrator. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Writing it from the narrative point of view gives you license. Writing it in first person, I would
Yeah. 'cause then you're-
never do that.
So would you say the narrator's voice is the author's voice? Is that,
Yes, I believe it is. Well, for this novel you're asking, absolutely. And in fact, that's why whenever I ask people, oh, should I hire somebody to do the audiobook, or should I do it in and I'd actually like to ask this group for that feedback. I was thinking about hiring professional talent or doing it in my voice. Everybody says that they believe that, books should be narrated in the author's voice if they're going to be an audiobook.
Yeah.
Listen to lots of audiobooks, and the ones that I like best are the ones that the author reads.
Uh-huh. Good.
Yeah, Rob, I had a question.
Yes.
My vision of someone writing a fiction book is that they don't know exactly where the book is going. They sit down to write, and the book kind of takes them. And
Yeah.
I'm wondering if you experienced any of that.
Well, I'm gonna answer that in a very Jewish way. I'm gonna answer it in two ways. So I've heard that said a lot of times. I believe that that's not a very well-written book if you don't know where you're going with it. What I would say about that is, they talk about the arc of a book. What I did is I wrote the prologue and the epilogue first. I knew what's called the arc of the story. I knew what arc I wanted to cover. I knew what theme, and one of the main themes is addiction, family secrets, right? Trauma, death, purpose, single word themes. I knew that, and I knew where I wanted to start and where I wanted to end. And then I kind of let the book write itself, and I let the characters speak. So there's both in there. I don't think you can just sit down and go, oh, I'm going to write a novel and I'll just let it come to me.
Let it write itself.
Let it write itself. No, I had in fact, the writing coach that I had teaches it at Hugo House. And the first course I took was called Fiction Novel Outlining. Mm. So he taught us kind of what the outline of a novel, the form it takes. Most fiction follows a format. Now, the characters can write their dialogue a lot of times, or it becomes the author's voice, as Marianne was saying. Would you say that the narrator is like the voice of Nona in this book is a lot of my voice? If you heard me in my therapist's office, you'd hear a lot of Nona. So ultimately, and I don't think this is a spoiler alert, Mira, during her death scene, encounters her grandmother and they talk. Okay. And Nona represents spirit. So it's somewhere in between, Stu, I guess is what I'm saying. You have to have an idea about where, what you want to write and where you want to start and where you want to finish. That's one of the reasons the movie producer is interested in the book, because it follows the arc of a, story that she likes.
Yeah, I get it. I didn't mean that you sit down and the thing just unfolds. I fully understand for it to have any coherence, it's got to have some kind of framework.
Right. In fact, that's what they talk about. They talk about, write the skeleton of the book to begin with, and then put flesh on it.
Yeah. People write in different ways, and some people, sometimes they find in developing the characters that the characters are wanting something that they hadn't planned in the beginning, something that interests them, that interests the author. And it goes in a character maybe that might have been minor becomes more major.
Right.
But you had a pretty good idea of what
I had a pretty good idea as far as
to say.
what I wanted to say and where I was going. Speaking about characters, there was a character who showed up in this book that I never expected. This is what you're talking about, Stu.
Right.
It happened. This character showed up, probably was one of the most meaningful characters that showed up, played a major part in a very short piece, and was just great. I loved writing that part. And I hadn't planned on that character being in the book at all.
It's more unexpected.
Yeah.
Yeah, which is the fun of
Fiction.
fiction, where you can sort of let your imagination go.
I actually support, I think everybody towards their senior years, I won't say what those might be, whenever you feel it.
Somebody older than us.
Somebody, no, probably about our age, Marianne. I hate to
I
inform
know.
you,
Reality
we're
breaks.
kind of there. Should write a memoir and should try their hand at fiction. I think it's really important to tell our story one way or the other. It doesn't have to be lengthy, but it's to take the time to sit with a pen and paper, in my case, a keyboard. I can't write longhand. I think we all should do it at some point in our life. I mean, it's not, but just something, even if it's a short little thing.
Yeah, it's a pretty healing process too. But it's making meaning of all these events. I mean, we can say this happened, that happened, and nobody really cares, But when it begins to have meaning, then it's interesting.
Oh, this is Joseph left a note. He said, "Thanks for tonight. Can't wait to listen to Audible. You left us right at the perfect cliffhanger."
Yeah.
Oh, golly. Yeah. So any other comments or?
Well, Rob, I'm going to
Thank you.
Yeah,
jump in.
I just have a comment. I wonder if this, if you think of Erickson's final stage, integrity versus despair, if this was, I'm sorry for all you who aren't in the field. I'm
Yeah,
just
that's okay.
talking like a social worker.
And you're educating, so don't worry about it, Pat.
Okay.
Yeah.
That final stage is where you sort of come to terms with your life and who you are, whether the characters in this book represented different aspects of your identity, and whether you were able to use that as a vehicle toward further integration.
Of my own?
Yes.
Oh, hell yes. Oh, hell yes. In fact, that's been the whole journey that started at the Wellness Institute was, and the memoir helped through integration. I knew I had to write it down to integrate it. And doing it this way just was a joy because it was entertaining, it was creative, it was, it just was fun. And stretched me in a way that I had never been stretched. Yeah, so that's exactly right.
Adult development.
Patty gets it.
Oh, she's a show off.
She's a show off.
That's funny.
She's my sister, and I'm a social worker too. But
are you?
Hey,
You
we
guys
got
are sisters?
here.
yeah, we're sisters.
Oh, sweet.
Oh,
She's
cool.
the one who heard about Bet Olive, but I joined first, so it's my synagogue.
There you go. And she's just a tag along.
She's a tag. But
tag.
she's very knowledgeable clinically.
Yeah.
And
Are you still in practice?
No,
No, we're both very old.
We want to be.
Yeah.
You're not that old, excuse me.
I
Well,
couldn't,
see, the problem is our clients, well, especially because of telemedicine now, we get to, I'm sitting at my work desk. With telemedicine, it's so easy to do the work, and our clients won't let us quit. That's the only problem.
Mhm.
I have clients who say you can't die and you can't retire. Neither one. It's not
Good luck
allowed.
with that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What do you
Yeah,
guys-
it's pretty fun to be, I mean, it's pretty enjoyable to be in that space. We're a little limited with telemedicine, but I did some work right before we came together, and it just puts me in that space.
Right.
And I do appreciate that.
Right.
Mhm.
Yeah. So I'll be talking about that in a couple weeks.
Oh, that's right. Everybody, I'm going to put in
It's
a
like to be
shameless
there.
plug. May I put in a shameless plug?
Hypnotherapy.
Everybody should attend. What's
Yeah,
the day?
everybody should attend. I think it's exactly 2 weeks, isn't it?
And
Yeah.
yes, it is. 2 weeks
Yeah.
from tonight.
2 weeks from tonight.
Time, same
The
station.
great Marianne Balt Speigel.
Oh, yeah, right. No, I think the
Presenting-
conversation is what's fun.
Talking about
Nope.
hypnotherapy? What are you going to talk about?
I'm talking about hypnotherapy, working with trauma, and how important it is, I think, for therapists to do their own personal work
Yeah.
so that you're not you're as clear as
Traumatizing.
you can be, being human, and just kind of the journey that we were on, because Rob got it earlier than I did, but well, I'll talk about that in a couple
You
of
can talk about it. Yeah. Leave it as a teaser. Don't give them the
Yeah,
punch.
teaser. Yeah, I won't give you, I'll leave a cliffhanger.
Punchline. Yeah. Well, I just want to thank everybody
great.
for listening.
Yeah, really great.
Really good. Thank
this
you.
was really fun. Thank you. I really enjoyed it.
Good. Because
I planned to go to bed 45 minutes ago, but
yeah, you said
Uh-oh.
you might have to get out of here.
it's the third. I listened to the rabbi. I listened to this, and then Friday night. So
Yeah, I know I can't compete with Olivier. I mean, that's ridiculous.
That was a great class.
Yeah.
yeah, I know. I was just saying I was staying up till 11:30 3 nights this week.
Yeah.
Oh, because you're on the East Coast. You must be.
Yeah, it's 11:30
Yeah.
here.
Oh,
Yeah,
yeah.
that was
The
really
Midwest
nice,
is-
dude, to put me on the day after Olivier. Thank you very much.
But
And
people
before-
can go and listen when they want.
You
to.
did very well. I like that this was interactive. I really enjoyed it.
Yeah,
But I
that was
am
good.
going to bed now. Good night,
Good night.
everyone.
Good night.
Night,
I'm
night.
going. I
Good
think
night.
I'm going to go to bed too.
Sweet dreams.
y'all.
Time for
Stu?
dinner here.
You
I
want to?
knew you could do it, Rob. Thank you.
Yes.